Our featured guest, Ken Courtis. He is the chairman at Starfort Investment Holdings, and he is part of Finance Minister Bill Morneau's Economic Advisory Council. Great to be with you once again, Ken. Thanks so much for coming in.
Catherine, great to be here.
Quite a bit to discuss, but let's certainly talk first and foremost about the rollback of carbon emissions and what this really means for Trump's energy plan and policy and how that affects Canada.
Well, Trump digs coal. So all those states, Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, you don't have to ask people how they voted, and they'll be very happy today. And coal's being pushed out not by regulation, but by natural gas, which is much cheaper and much cleaner, and the U.S. is floating in natural gas. What energy independence would mean for the U.S. if they effectively did become energy independent would have a huge impact on us. They import more energy from us than anyone else in the world. So if you combine energy independence with a border tax, that could have a huge impact on our country, and particularly the energy patch.
Well, what are we thinking in terms of the impact?
Let's take the border tax and then combine it with the energy independence. Let's say you and I are both oil refiners. We're both American.
Okay.
And you're sourcing oil from the U.S. at $50 a barrel. I'm sourcing oil from the international market from Canada at $50 a barrel. There's a 20% border tax. So I'm going to actually pay $50 plus 20% of 50, so I'm going to pay $60 a barrel for the same product. We're selling it to the same consumer. What am I going to do the next time around? I'm going to buy energy in the U.S. to supply my refinery. So that's the impact it could have on us. Now, if you take together with the fact that he's going to accelerate drilling and production of energy to export more, that means also that they will need less imports. So we've got to watch this very, very closely. This is potentially extremely dangerous for Canada.
Extremely dangerous. But Ken, do you really think that they will put a border adjustment tax in, number one? And number two, with respect to their resources, how are their resources versus our assets in Canada?
Well, their production costs are much lower. I mean, the tar sands are among the highest cost oil in the world. So number one. So border tax, if it comes in, automatically hits us. Does it come in or doesn't come in? Who knows? But we can't keep our head in the sand and pretend it's not going to happen. We have to prepare for it to happen.
So what do you think that means in terms of being prepared? Because it sounds as though we're not.
Well, it means a couple things. Number one, you take out energy, the U.S. has a huge trade surplus with us. Plus they have a service account surplus with us. So maybe there could be a carve-out for Canada. We get in a new trade negotiation. Secondly, our oil producers should be every second figuring out how to cut costs, take those costs down, because we're going to be competing with very low-cost producers in the U.S. And thirdly, we have to find new markets for our energy, including Eastern Canada with a national pipeline, but also buyers in the Pacific.
But Ken, that seems to be the one area where we really haven't made a lot of progress, being able to export our natural resources outside of North America because of, obviously, regulations and environmental protection. You know, today where President Trump is rolling it back, we've still got exactly the same rules in place, and maybe for all the right reasons. But from what you're saying from an economic perspective, we're not going to have a place to put our oil.
We could start by selling some more Canadian oil to Canadians. We import a lot of oil. So that would be one place to start. And we have to move ahead on figuring out ways to either increase the value added of the oil and not just export raw gas and oil, but to transform it into products, higher value added products, and also figure out a way to export it to people who do want it, who do need it.
Ken, when you say that this is potentially a very dangerous situation for Canada, what does that really mean to you and to our viewers? And I don't mean it in terms of what the solutions have to be. It's like, what would Canada look like if we don't actually come up with some solutions and do it faster than slower?
If we just sit there and sit on our hands and think that everything's hunky-dory, we're going to find out that everything is not hunky-dory. So we don't have a choice.
But would you see a recession in Canada?
If we just sit there and we don't work to cut our costs, and we don't work to find new markets, and we don't work to sell more Canadian oil to Canadians and gas to Canadians, it will continue to have a huge impact on Alberta, and through Alberta, the rest of the country.
Add to that, of course, further discussion that we will see tax reform in the United States. How will that impact Canada? And part of the question, of course, is do you think that the United States will actually be able to put through tax reform, given what we saw with repeal and replacement of Obamacare, which wasn't done?
That's a great question, because part of the tax cut, they plan to finance it through the new healthcare program. So the healthcare program didn't happen. The tax savings they thought they'd have there, they could use against the tax cuts, aren't there. So now they're in the process of refiguring, reconfiguring the whole program. Who knows when they want to do it quickly, because the first 100 days they've effectively lost. We don't know yet what that program is going to be.
So when you look at what we learned last week with respect to Canada's budget and outlook, was it the right move to kind of stay the course because we don't know a lot of these unknowns and uncertainties in the United States?
I think that's the government position as I understand it. Let's hold our powder dry until we see how this beast is going to pop, left, right, center, up, down, backwards. Trudeau's father said, you know, we're like a mouse in bed with an elephant. The mouse twitches and the elephant doesn't feel it. The elephant twitches, we feel it. So we've got to calibrate our policy relative to that. And it's a big issue because we effectively have a government that's governing on the premise that Canadians believe the state has an important role in the economy. And in the US, you have a government today that believes a smaller state is a better state, a laissez-faire economy. Just get in there and fight about it. So we're going in different directions on many issues. Environment we talked about, on taxes, on health care, on role in global institutions, on peacekeeping, on China. There are many issues in which we have fundamental divergence with the U.S. So we're just going to have to play this very carefully, and I think that's what the government's doing.
That's what they're doing. Do you think that that's the right solution? Should we have maybe done something sooner to make sure that we've got the stimulus going in our economy, like lower taxes? Of course, the conversation was potentially raising taxes. What did you think when that chatter was going about? Did you think that would have been the wrong move, and if anything, lower?
I think the government, were it to update its economic forecast today, it would be for a stronger economy than a weaker one. In other words, stronger than the last forecast. So I think the budget was probably, in the circumstances, okay. The problem we're going to have if these Trump policies get put into place, tax cuts, deregulation, income from profit from abroad brought back, infrastructure, the U.S. is going to get 3 to 4% growth. And that means higher U.S. interest rates. And our interest rates will follow them to a certain extent, and the dollar will drop to a certain extent. But think of it, Catherine. A quarter-point increase in the Canadian prime rate slices $4 billion out of the Canadian consumption. So let's say we have rates that go up 1.25 over the next 14, 16 months. That's $20 billion chopped out of our economy, in an economy where we have a household sector that has the highest debt levels ever. So we've got a lot on the agenda, and we can't make any mistakes.